With 3 million Epstein files released last week, new exchanges are constantly coming to light. And this might be the most concerning yet, which is a big statement, obviously, when it comes to the Epstein files. So it's between Epstein and the Hollywood producer Barry Josephson. It's from February 2011, and it starts like this. There are two elements, really, to this email chain. So always, as you always do, you read from bottom to the top. Jeffrey, how old is she now? Best, Barry J. Now, Barry Josephson, as I say, Hollywood producer. 16, says Jeffrey Epstein. Thank you very, very much. Now, the subject line here is your niece. And then there's a reply from Barry Josephson who says, her full name again, is she in New York for a few weeks? And sorry, please have your office forward me her mum's contact info again. A friend is shooting a feature in NY and I'll try to get her in. So this is the modus operandi, isn't it? You know, you get someone, is it for modeling? I'm not sure. But anyway, thank you very, very much. They're 16. Anyway, there'll be pages and pages of this stuff in the emails. This is the part that seemed more unusual, I suppose. I hadn't quite realized that this type of thing was in this email cache. So it's still with the forward your niece. But this fella, Barry Josephson, says, cool, I'm excited. Also, I've been thinking a lot about that question that you asked Bill Gates, quote, how do we get rid of poor people as a whole, unquote. And I have an answer, comment regarding that for you. When can I call you today to discuss this? So obviously how to get rid of all the poor. He didn't want to put in an email. So he saved that little plan, that little nugget for a phone call. Now, of course, as is often the case, there are two potential ways of reading this. It could be, it could be a question about how to kill all poor people, which seems more likely. Or it could be, we have to be fair, it could be a question about how you end poverty. If there's no poverty, there will be no poor people, right? I should say, how do we get rid of poor people as a whole? A universal basic income, maybe. Maybe that's the angle they're going down. It would be a strange way of phrasing if that was the point, right? When people argue for a UBI, they don't normally say it's so we can eradicate the poor, but there we are. I suppose one thing that maybe does lead to thinking that second interpretation could be the case is that, as far as I understand, Bill Gates has devoted a lot of time and energy to reducing poverty. Right? I don't look at Bill Gates as someone who's trying to kill poor people. He has invested a lot of money, a lot of time in vaccination drives, in the kind of policies that have actually saved a lot of lives, especially in the poorest countries in Africa. So in that context, maybe you could read it like that. However, there is supporting evidence to suggest that the most uncharitable reading of this is true, and that Epstein really was thinking about genocide. How do we kill all the poor, Bill? And this is an article from the New York Times in 2019 about how Jeffrey Epstein hoped to seed the human race with his DNA. So basically, Epstein was quite into eugenics, and we wanted to use technology and selective breeding to make smarter humans. We're already quite freaky. This is the kicker, though, in terms of how we interpret this initial email. The context here is that Epstein would invite top scientists for salons at his Manhattan apartment. And Steven Pinker, so the linguist and sort of evolutionary biologist, is describing one of the conversations that took place there. This is from that NYTR article. The Harvard cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker said he was invited by colleagues, including Mark Novak, a Harvard professor of mathematics and biology, and the theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss, to salons and coffee klatches at which Mr. Epstein would hold court. While some of Mr. Pinker's peers hailed Mr. Epstein as brilliant, Mr. Pinker described him as an intellectual imposter. He would abruptly change the subject, ADD style, dismiss an observation with an adolescent wisecrack, Mr. Pinker said. At one session at Harvard, Mr. Epstein criticized efforts to reduce starvation and provide healthcare to the poor because doing so increased the risk of overpopulation, said Mr. Pinker, who was there. Mr. Pinker said he had rebutted the argument, citing research showing that high rates of infant mortality simply cause people to have more children. Mr. Epstein seemed annoyed, and a Harvard colleague later told Mr. Pinker that he had been voted off the island and was no longer welcome at Mr. Epstein's gatherings. Stephen, so my process of looking at lots of these things is I see a tweet where someone shared the screenshot and you think, that is so wild, that must be fabricated, that can't be true. And then you read it again and you say, that's so wild, it must be that there is a slightly more anodyne interpretation for what has been said. But I do think Occam's razor here suggests that Jeffrey Epstein was asking Bill Gates, how do we kill all the poor people.
How do we get rid of poor people as a whole?
As a whole.
As a whole. I mean, I don't think there's two meanings there, really. Alleviate poverty, end poverty, as you say, abolish poverty, alleviate poor people as a whole. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, it's dark because, I mean, he's friends with, Peter Thiel, and there is a kind of transhumanist, sort of post-human, let's leave ordinary people sort of behind as the detritus of history. I mean, it's quite similar to Nazism, right? So you have eugenics, and then you say, these are lesser humans.
Right.
They're a waste of time and space and oxygen. Let's have the Übermensch make babies with each other, and then we'll keep enough young, attractive women to service our needs. But beyond that, meh.
Yeah, I'll seed the human population with my DNA, and those will be the ones that we save, because those are the ones that are most like me, a member of this elite who gets to look at other human populations as though they're livestock. Like these views, they come straight out of the handbook for cattle management. Like, how do I stop my herd from overpopulating? Well, I'll just decrease healthcare or that sort of thing. It's not new. It's not a new way in which elites talk about ordinary people. It's, as you say, it has links to like Nazi ideology, but aristocrats talked this way in the 19th century and earlier about ordinary people. I'm sure that under full-on serfdom, serfs were regarded much like cattle as well in many cases. They were useful for their productivity, but otherwise not really humans. And this is, I think this is just the view that elites take, because they imagine that being in the position that they are, which is one of wealth and power, means that they have some intrinsic superiority that got them there, rather than chance or fate, like an intellectual superiority or a moral superiority or something like that, which allows them to cast these kinds of judgments or make these proposals.
Is that overstating the case slightly?
Why?
But to say that, because I don't think Mr. Epstein's views, I'm reading, the New York Times always refer to people as Mr. Epstein. I don't necessarily think his views are representative of the elite, right? I think there are certain people in the elite who believe them. But I mean, clearly Steven Pinker disagreed. I don't actually think Bill Gates is trying to kill all the poor. So, I mean, he's expressing a particularly grotesque view that may circulate among elites and may also circulate among sort of non-elites. Obviously, Nazism was a popular project. So I'm not sure it is sort of just to say, okay, this is the elites. They hate poor people. They treat them like cattle and they want them dead.
I don't say all elites, right.
It's one guy. I mean, it's obviously not just one guy. It's a few guys. Yeah. But I don't think we can sort of make that sweeping statement.
No, but I think it's a kind of view that you can associate with elites of all kind, right? It's not the kind of view that ordinary people have about like the groups that they belong to. It's.
I think lots of people think that they're the smart group and other people are the dumb groups.
Right, but then that's a positioning themselves as an elite, right? In which case that's where that kind of view can arise. It's not, it's in the Nazi project, it's the idea that this is the master race, which gives rise to these kinds of views. And in these cases, it's like these successful captains of industry are the master race, and it gives rise to that kind of view. But yeah, I don't think for a minute that every single person who's, very rich or very powerful has these views, but they're definitely views that I associate with elites. In fact, it's the kind of a requirement to have the view that you consider yourself to be one of them or that you are one of them.
Potentially. I think you have a lot of, because it depends what you consider an elite, right? So there will be lots of people who think that the race next door are, less worthy and shouldn't really be there.
Sure.
Who might be not rich, for example. Obviously, they think of themselves as superior to the other person in some degree, but.
Yes, okay, fine. A sense of superiority.
A sense of superiority is required, because that's implied.
And superiority often comes attached to being elite in some way.
And I suppose there will be lots of elites who have the sense of superiority without the genocidal intent.
Of course, yeah.
He sort of combined both of them, which is very worrying. And what's crazy is he was the best friend of a Labour politician. So the whole point of Peter Mandelson was to say, or the whole point of New Labour was to say, you know what we can do? We can ally with the very wealthy, but also do right for the working class. And I can see that if you're friends with Bill Gates, right? He's a very wealthy man. Lots of criticisms to be made of the man, especially this week. But if you look at what he's actually done, as opposed to what might be in an email with Jeffrey Epstein, lots of money invested in vaccines, in mosquito nets, lots of things that have genuinely saved lots of lives. If Peter Mandelson was best friends with him, I can see how that could fit with the new Labour, how they like to present themselves. Being friends with literally the guy who is the billionaire pedo who wants to kill all poor people, I don't think there is any like, oh, there's a third way. There's a third way where we can be best friends with Jeffrey Epstein and still help the masses. No, there's not. This is impossible. He is a Nazi pedo freak who happens to, shower gifts on you and take you to lovely islands where sex crimes take place against children.